could you just give us a little bit of your background prior to setting up the NGO Love the Ocean in Mozambique?
So my background, there wasn't much before I started the NGO, to be honest. I was very young. I was 21. I had fallen in love with the ocean I'd fallen in love with sharks at age 8 when my mum took me to the London Aquarium. I grew up like really far away from the ocean, so I didn't like aquariums. I know they've got a lot of controversy, but they're an incredibly useful tool for education and inspiration and for city kids. And for me, that was what got me into marine biology initially. I mean, I didn't know it was called marine biology when I was 8. I just liked sharks. I then learned to dive. I got really lucky and learned to dive when I was 13. Cool. And then I got like obsessed with it basically, and progressed kind of through, did my first professional dive qualification when I was 19 and was kind of convinced I was going to play music and travel the world and dive. And that was all I wanted to do, like see everything underwater and have fun. And then I went to university and did marine biology because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I knew I liked things underwater and I knew I liked animals. And so I just did marine biology because I was like, oh, well, that's underwater animals. Didn't really read into it much at the time, which was just a stroke of luck that it all worked out. I would definitely recommend that people read what they're going to do beforehand. But for me, it was just lucky that, it all worked out. And then, at the end of my second year at university, I went to one of those career events where they talk about, what you're going to do with your life when you graduate. And I was only second year. I was on a 4-year integrated master's course, but a lot of my friends were the year above and they were all going to it to like work out what they were going to do with their lives. So I went along with them and met this guy that was like, oh, we got this internship in South Africa. I applied for it and they could only take me during my exam season, so I couldn't go. And the guy that ran it was like, oh, my wife has a photography internship in Mozambique and I work as a photographer as my second source of income. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. So I applied for that, got it. And that was my first kind of introduction to Mozambique. Fell in love with it, fell in love with people, fell in love with the animals. It's just where we are in Yambon is actually translates as from the local dialect as the land of the good people. Cool. So it's actually like such a great vibe, and everyone's lovely, and I just fell in love with it. So when I was there, I was still studying marine biology at this point, and I saw sharks being killed in the local fisheries, and so wanted initially just to like understand more about the shark fisheries, and like the sharks had always been my core interests that got me my kind of like entry gateway animal into marine biology. So it was like quite emotional seeing these sharks killed, but it's one thing if it's killed on like just that individual versus like everyday multiple on a large scale kind of thing, in terms of like the ecological importance of it. So I wanted to understand a little bit more about like what was happening and why and where, like what was the driving factors. And because I was studying an integrated master's, it basically means that you don't have to reapply. You just collect your data at the end of for me, I'd collected it at the end of my third year. So I went back the following year, collected at the end of my third year in Mozambique, spent 4 months with the shark fishermen, understanding the fin trade and why the sharks were being killed and like the issues that go along with it. And initially wrote my master's on that and got the results you'd think in terms of the sustainability of it, i.e. not sustainable. And then decided to start the organization to research that more. But I met Pascal within the first kind of 2 weeks. And then Andrea, so Pascal's our community outreach manager, and then Andrea's one of our directors. And we each kind of like developed parts of the organization. Pascal did a lot of the educational outreach. And the more we read and talked to people and like kind of worked out what's worked and what hasn't worked for other NGOs around the world, we realized that you can't just have a mission of stopping the shark fin trade in our area. We needed a kind of more broad mission. There's so many different socioeconomic factors that go into it. So we changed the goal from stopping shark fin trade to establishing the area as a marine protected area, which is kind of like an umbrella mission which encompasses the shark fin trade, but also a lot of other different habitats, and has a lot of like local community benefits as well. And then slowly we've built out the organization to what it is today. So we do a lot of different projects now, but like when we started, I have a lot of people, like young students, that always come to me when I talk at universities and like, oh, I really want to do this. Like, but how did you do all of it? And I'm like, I did not start with all of these projects at once. It was very much like, I was quite naive, and I was 21 and Pascal was 22. Like we were
Sure.
babies when we started, and we didn't really know what we were doing, which I think actually helped, because when you don't know about your subject, tend to be obviously different people, but like tend to be really open to learning about what how to do things and what's the best way to do it. So I think that helped, and that we were young and kind of naive in that respect. So we built out stuff slowly, and now we do a lot of different things, and we have a team of really dedicated, passionate individuals, which I adore, and we have a really good vibe, and it's a lovely work environment. But it didn't start as busy as we are now.
Okay. I'm actually surprised, because when I was researching the things that you do and looking through your documentation, it's all really well presented and really well documented, which generally has the feel of an organization that had a plan from the beginning, you know what I mean? As opposed to someone that evolved everything as they went along. So good job with your communications.
Well, it's definitely been like, it's been an organic growth process, but I'm also doing a PhD part-time at the moment, and I've just done the lit review for it. And the lit review is basically how to plan successfully and create a marine protected area that like has longevity and sustainability. And pretty much all the literature these days, the like scientific world is kind of waking up to Indigenous voices and understanding the value in local knowledge. And Western science, it's great to like collect data on different elements in the ocean, but the knowledge that fishers hold, for example, is generational and has so much value. And these are things that like Pascal and I obviously knew from the start, because we were in it and working in it, and so you just absorb that as part of your growth process. So it wasn't news to us, but it's been really nice for me, like rereading all of this literature that's like recently released, and we've all kind of been like, we're already doing that. But this is like new news to some people. So I think in that sense, it shaped in an organic way that was like really, it like seems planned, but it wasn't, but it just like naturally evolved that way. But now people are planning that way because it is a good way to do it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'd like to come back to that point about the local indigenous knowledge, but before we do that, can you give us like a little bit of an overview of what you learned about the shark fin trade in Mozambique? Because I don't really understand the context.
No worries. So the shark fin trade is a global trade, and fins are harvested across the world. China is one of the biggest markets for it. They're consumed in something called shark fin soup, which is used to usually show affluence. There's no like nutritional value to it. It's actually been proven to harm your health. There's no nutritional value to it at all, but it's really expensive, and it's like it's less common nowadays, and it's definitely more frowned upon than it used to be. Like there's definitely been some really good moves in the right direction in terms of outlawing it, and Hong Kong doesn't have it at governmental events anymore or anything.
So just a quick question. So the sharks that they're taking the fins from in Mozambique, they're exporting 100% of it.
Yes, the fins. So this is where it kind of, there's a few loopholes in the law that come into play. So killing some species is illegal. So there's such a thing as the Convention for the International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES. And CITES outlaws for any of the countries signed up to the treaty, which is pretty much all the UN countries, it outlaws fishing specific animals and trading in their body parts. So you have like whale sharks on there, manta rays are on there, hammerheads are now on there, and there's different like levels of what you're allowed to trade and what you're allowed to like kill for consumption. And Mozambique's law the national law slightly contradicts it. So you can be abiding by the national law, but be breaking kind of that international treaty. For instance, the scalloped hammerheads are illegal to fish under CITES, but under national law in Mozambique, you can fish anything under over 150 centimeters, which that length is completely not biologically relevant. Like it's not the size that they reach maturity or anything like that. So there, like a lot of people are landing these sharks, and you can, like, if you catch it via bycatch, which is basically catching something by accident, and you declare that you're catching it by accident, it's not really illegal. Like you could just get told off. But if you've killed it, you may as well sell the fins. So there's like this loophole where you can land the shark, you can eat the meat, and you can sell the fins, and technically you're not finning.
Okay, I see.
But it's a little bit of a gray area. So the idea is that of LTO initially was just to stop this practice of selling these fins and removing that financial incentive. But realistically, in an area that poverty levels are super high, people rely on the ocean as a primary protein and financial source of income. You can't just tell people that they can't do anymore. They're going to keep doing it because they need to feed their family. And ultimately, like me or you would do the exact same. Like if you've got to choose between your kids and a shark, you're going to kill the shark. And I love sharks, but I would still say that. So it's much more complex than just changing the law and saying, well, this is it now. You've got to think about alternative sources of income for those individuals. You've got to think about the education. You've got to think about why they'd want to change that practice, and all of those kind of different elements that go into it. Becomes complex very quickly.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And so I guess that's what starts to lead you down the path of doing community programs and things like that, when you have to find alternative sources of income and education and things like that, right? So maybe can you talk a little bit about some of the programs that you do? And I don't know if there's like a chronological order in which you sort of decided to launch them, or a story to that.
Yeah, I guess there probably is. I actually haven't been asked that question before. So the swimming was kind of a natural one because you're wanting to educate. Well, I guess actually we started the just educational outreach in schools first. So Pascal was leading these lessons on like what's a coral reef and what's a marine protected area, that kind of thing, like why you don't throw trash in the ocean, that type of stuff. Pretty basic. That was 10 to 13-year-olds, so you know, nothing super advanced. But it's great teaching about it, but like seeing it is very different, and that's really where you get like people caring about the ocean. And in our area, like 95% of people can't swim, and there's a really high drowning rate. Like we've had 16 people in the last 2 years drown in our bay. So because there's such a high drowning rate, people are scared of the ocean, and you're not going to want to protect something that you fear.
You're scared of.
And so you've got to remove that fear barrier and create a safe space. In our area, like our coastline, the east coast of Africa and South Africa, is called the Wild Coast, and it's called the Wild Coast for a reason. Like we have surf, we have like there's not really any liverboards that go up our coastline because it's just like quite rough and tumble. Like it's big waves that crash onto the shore. Beautiful for surfing, some of the best surf spots in the world. But in terms of learning to swim, it's not like the Maldives where you can like walk into the water and it's flat. Like if you try and go in our ocean, you'll just get smashed with a wave, which is fine if you want to wave jump, and like lots of our students that visit us and stuff do that. But if you're an 8-year-old and you're trying to learn to swim, that's not the best environment for you to learn to swim. And so what we do is we rent a pool in the local area. and from a resort, and it's like the only appropriate pool for teaching swimming, because a lot of the resorts have things like plunge pools and stuff like that, but that's you can't teach like a 4-year-old how to swim in a plunge pool. So we rent a pool, and part of like they learn in the lessons about riptides, how to get out of a riptide, like the theory of it, because realistically a lot of the drownings that happen are because of riptides in our area. So we teach about riptides, what they are and how to get out of them, but the practical side of that is also swimming, because if you can't swim, you're not going to be able to get out of one. So that's on weekends. So we teach something on weekends to 4 to 18-year-olds generally. And they progress from beginner to intermediate to advanced. When they're advanced, they're about age 16. We offer them the opportunity to become what we call an ocean conservation champion, an OCC. And OCCs, we sponsor like further qualifications. So we sponsor their high school, we sponsor diving, we sponsor swimming instructing, we sponsored driving. Mario, who's our in-country storyteller, and Bento, who's our field officer, both were OCCs, and they've kind of progressed through that program and now are staff full-time with us. But the idea isn't that we just employ all of the OCCs, because our organization is not that big. The idea is that people have the skill set to gain employment within the marine space, because with the creation of the marine protected area, the job creation is going to be within that space. So the idea is people can get jobs at, surf schools and dive schools and that kind of stuff, and progress that way. And then this year we also launched a women's swimming project, which was funded by an organization called Daughters for Earth. And that was linked to increasing female representation within the marine space, because in our area, there are 0 women that enter the water. Women typically are just involved in like oysters and mussels, farming. Well, not farming, more harvesting. And the lack of women in these spaces means that they're completely excluded from conservation conversations. So when we do like big community meetings, where essentially we talk about these projects, and like community members bring up different projects that they'd like to do and all of that kind of stuff, and progress updates and things like that. And there's no women at these meetings. And when you construct a conservation strategy, and I would hope that like every company in the world does this, but I know it doesn't happen. But the way that we've designed our organization, it does. You have these meetings and you need such a diverse team of people there, because everyone has different experiences in life. And especially within our community, we need like different genders, different ages, like every single kind of different demographic you can think of. We need representation there, because they're going to be able to tell you, when you say, oh, we've got this project we think would be great, they're going to be able to say, oh, but you're going to run up against this, and you're going to run up against that, and this and that, and this will piss this person off, and you need to talk to this person, this government official, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll only get that from having those people in that room at that meeting. And 53% people in our area are female. So by not having women in those meetings, you're literally eliminating 53% of your stakeholders and 53% of your input on a project, which is, your project's going to fall flat if you do that. So increasing women in the marine space is really important. And the first stage in that is learning to swim, to be able to learn to dive. So we've got a project at the moment that, last year we trained the first female in our area to dive, which was super awesome to have that. But we've also launched, and we are kind of in the launch, slow launch of an aquaculture project. We've done the environmental scoping for it, but essentially an aquaculture farming project. So oysters and mussels, predominantly mussels, but basically because women have been are like the primary mussel and oyster harvesters. And so this isn't something that we had to pitch as a female project to, men that potentially may not want their wives to have independent financial source of income. We didn't have to launch it as a female project. We just launched it as a mussel project. And because mussels are traditionally something that women take care of, it naturally fell into, it's going to be women that manage this project. And so these women have been through an intensive swimming course this year and then they're going to be going through business management. One of the women is completely illiterate, doesn't speak Portuguese, which is our national dialect. And so she'll be going through a literacy course before she's able to, reading, writing and Portuguese lessons, because our local dialect isn't written. So she needs to learn Portuguese before she can learn to read and write. And then these 4 women are managing this project, which basically we had natural spat, which I don't know how much you know about mussels, but spat is like the baby stuff, that like basically baby mussels. And sometimes at these farms and stuff, you have to artificially grow it, but we're really lucky it grows naturally. And basically what's happening is the spat eventually outcompetes each other and half of it dies off. And so what happens every kind of month is the community goes out and picks whatever is there that grew big enough. But what we can do is harvest the baby spat, grow it separately, grow it bigger. And these women can harvest that. And that is off the rocks. It's suspended in the water, like anchored out at sea kind of thing. And the women, all they have to do is kayak out, jump in, literally harvest these mussels. They can do it monthly because you stagger when you plant the spat. You can do it monthly, so you have a monthly source of income. And we worked out all the financials and did the whole business model and stuff, and it makes sense to do that. So they'll not only will it supplement food and financial security in the area, it will also give these women a financial source of income that's independent from their spouses, which also, when you think about like bodily autonomy and being able to choose how many kids you have, having access to contraception, the only people that have access to contraception are people that can go into town, and you can't go into town if you don't have money for the bus. So things like that tie in really, really quickly. And so it all becomes, you can see how like it all becomes really complex really rapidly. But that's part of why I love my job, because you pull on one string and it's so much, so many different things.
So some people would look at that and just get overwhelmed. So what is it? Why do you not have that? And does that sort of come back to what you said in the beginning a little bit about, you know, sometimes the things that you don't know can't hurt you in a way?
Yeah, 100%. Like I have a joke with some of my friends where I remember telling one of them when I first met them about what I do, and she was like, "Oh, that's so badass." And I was like, "I'm not sure I'd call it badass. I think I'd call it naivety." And now we have this joke where like one of us will be like, "Oh, it's badass," and the other one will be like, "No, it's naivety." And I think like that does help to a degree. I also give myself a 3-day panic period. So like I'll know that there's something, and it was now I get phased a lot less than I used to. But when I was 21, obviously everything was quite big and scary. So I remember like having to set up the website or open the bank account, like stuff that you absolutely have to do to be able to move forward. But it felt like really real because it was an idea coming to fruition. And I gave myself 3 days where I could just freak out for 3 days and be like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly do that. Oh my gosh. And at the end of the 3 days, I'd be like, okay, well, if I want to move forward, this absolutely has to be done. It's not really negotiable. So, and then I do it. So I think allowing yourself to freak out is definitely useful.
Well, and that's, I'm conscious of the time. Unfortunately, we only scheduled 30 minutes for this discussion, but I've got loads more questions. So I'd love to try to find another time to maybe spend a bit longer going it deeper. But what you said just then, that little piece of advice, is there any, how long has it been since you started up the NGO?
9 years.
9 years. So looking back, is there advice you would give to yourself? And so by default to any other young person out there looking to get started in something like this?
Advice. Learn how to do contracts ASAP. That is a skill that I didn't see coming. Definitely learn contracts ASAP and make friends or build an advisory board with people with skill sets that are different to your own. I'd say that is, I could say all the like cliche stuff of like, keep your head up, don't listen to the haters. But I think like in terms of like applicable business advice, having people with skill sets that are different to your own, whether it's like accountants, lawyers, whatever, it's going to come in useful. And learning the stuff that you need to be able to run a business, because whether it's a charity or a business, like I run a charity, but it runs like a business, you still need contracts with people, and you still need like all the insurance and things like that people, you're not taught about it, and it sucks because it's never like a straightforward process. And starting a charity is so not straightforward that I have like 3 other friends that also started charities, and it's the blind leading the blind. Like one person will send a WhatsApp like, did you do this? And another person will reply being like, I don't really know, I tried, and I don't know if I'm accidentally committing tax fraud, but like I honestly have no idea. And the government website's so useless as well that it's really, really challenging. So I'd say networking as like a skill to be able to meet all these different people with these different skills and these different experiences is definitely important.
Yeah. Okay. And I had a bunch of questions about the things you were doing on YouTube, because I thought that was really interesting. I feel like some of that is kind of networking.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. We're about to start up again in the near future, I think. So.
Okay. Well, I won't hold you any longer. Thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me. I hope
no worries.
I hope you don't mind if I reach out again and see if we can get some more
definitely.
time on the calendar.
Yeah, for
All
sure.
right.
I love talking about. I love the ocean. So.
Excellent. Congratulations on everything you've done. It's
thank you very much.
Very inspiring.
No worries. Congratulations on starting all of this as well.
Yeah, well, I'm just at the beginning of my journey with this, so
yeah,
we'll see.
It's an exciting journey, though.
It is. Thanks, Francesca.
Cool. Thanks very much. Bye.
Imagine a world where local communities independently manage their own conservation and sustainability. Imagine a system where anyone who cared for a community, local people, local businesses, or even visitors, could pool resources and fund activities that helped that community. Taumana is a platform for local communities to launch and promote their own independent community funds. People and businesses who care about the community can join by pledging a small monthly subscription. With each new member, the fund size increases, attracting those active within the community. Any person or organization can then produce an environmental or social action and post a video of that action into the community fund. The members reward the sustainability actions that they like with financial support from the community fund. The more members in a community fund, the larger the fund becomes, which attracts more producers, who then submit more actions, which then engages more members. This launches a flywheel of change that produces a stream of member-supported actions that, over time, tell the unique story of each community's evolution towards sustainability. Taumana enables communities to independently create their own story of change. Join us now to become a part of that story at taumana.com.